Hello, everybody. Daniel Thorniley here, Russia Business Group. And today we're doing one of our regular interviews, or actually casual business conversations. I'm happy to be talking with a good old friend, Stefan Van Doorslaer, who is the global CEO of Ahlers. And I think the first thing, Stefan, is a warm welcome to you. Very nice to be speaking online, and sometimes we are together face to face, and I look forward to the next time, perhaps in Istanbul or Dubai or Vienna or Prague. And really just to say, could you give us a little bit about your personal background, and then obviously just generally about the company Ahlers, and then we'll talk in about the business environment and sustainability. So over to you.
Yes, hi Danny, thanks for the invitation. So I'm a Belgian person. I'm living for the moment still in Russia. I'm working in logistics for over 25 years in different international companies, but since the last 17 years, so it looks like I'm having fun, I'm working for the same family-owned business called Ahlers. It's a Belgian family-owned business, logistics. A little bit more than 100-year existence, and we're very active in Eastern Europe, but also Asia, but also CIS and Belgium, and the focus was always on Russia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and the Baltic countries, with warehousing, transportation, a lot of classical logistic activities. Myself, I moved to Russia over 10 years ago to become the local director, and I did, seems like a good job, because I became a regional director, and since 2019 I'm CEO of the group, but still based in Russia. So it was a big challenge more than a year ago, because our dependency was high, but I think as a company we made a very clear decision that we stay loyal to our customers, as well as in Ukraine, as Kazakhstan, as Russia, as also our people. So we are still active in the region. Of course, our business is reducing because we have less customers or less volumes. On the other hand, it's also an extra trigger to diversify to other regions, to go to Vietnam, to go to Turkey, for example, to Georgia, other countries. So I'm doing this for quite some time. We have around 1,000 people worldwide, and I think every year there's something happening, and then you make very interesting webinars about COVID and what happened with logistics or other things. So logistics is always quite a challenge, and there are always new roadblocks, and it's our job to solve them.
Before we move on to sustainability and Russia, Central Europe, obviously everybody's got, since let's say COVID, a bigger, keener interest in logistics. The trend was, there was a very high, there was a demand for it, and costs for logistics shot up. And of course, many of the listeners and viewers to this conversation will be interested in the trend. Just to let you know, from our surveys, we're seeing both globally and within CE and Russia, a forecast budget that logistic costs will still be rising in 23-24, but at a lower rate than in 21-22. Is that your feel as well, from your perspective, or is it something different?
I think today it's a bit different. So as you mentioned, I think starting COVID, people start to understand the role of logistics and the impact it can have on your personal life. The e-commerce was booming, then all these small deliveries to your home, and people start to feel that if the goods are not available or the logistic channels are not working, what is the impact? I think costs were rising. Costs last year were very high. I think there are a lot of studies and proofs about that. And like last year, you see, and I'm not talking about CIS, but globally, the customer was saying, if you can bring me the goods, I don't care about what I should pay, but if you can bring me the goods, I will be happy, because there's a shortage on truck drivers, on trucks, on sea freight. So the price was booming, but you see, I think since this year, prices are going down. We see that sea freight rates are going down, which is good. We see also that even trucking rates in Europe are going down because there is more capacity. There is, of course, the opposite effect of inflation. So the truck drivers, all the people working logistics, they get higher salaries, higher costs. But I think even, and I'm talking about my company, we see that our rates maybe are stable, but you have less the exceptions. They ask for something, we need something urgently, and that was almost impossible, and it was a very high rate, while now this urgent or unique request you can also handle with a normal rate. So I think that, and I hope for our listeners or viewers that also their logistics cost is at least stable and not increasing, because I think, and I'm now talking about transportation.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Stefan. Interesting. To qualify what I said, I think the trend also fits with what you say. If anybody's got increasing costs, it's at a lower rate than last year, and it may be accelerating downwards. I also noticed that producer prices in Russia, for example, also all input costs, paper, timber, energy, whatever, logistics, heavily minus, about minus 15% in April, one of the lowest numbers in the world. So fingers crossed for the manufacturers. You know, we're seeing a lot about inflation in the global media, but input costs do seem to be stabilizing and coming down. I keep referring to, we're going to talk in a minute about sustainability, and we are. That'll be my second question. But I'm tempted, you talked about your geographies and countries, and you mentioned CIS. Both of us have a personal interest in this region with what's happening in Russia. And we've just done a survey, Stefan, which included questions on CIS. Anecdotally, I'm getting big interest in the non-Russian CIS markets. By the way, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Caucasus. Our survey showed interest. And the good thing the survey showed was, you know, are you happy with the development of your business? About 20% said yes, 60% said it's too early to say, and 20% said, well, we're a bit disappointed. What I take as something good there is that 60% are managing their expectations, not thinking the CIS is going to transform their business globally, you know, and trying clunk, 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 clunk. What dynamics are you seeing in CIS for your business?
I think from our side, we look always from two angles. Where can we commercially develop? So where can we have a sales team, find local customer or international customers? So that's one item. And where are the goods going, the transit, the physical flows? So we see, as you mentioned, a lot of commercial developers in Kazakhstan. At this moment of speaking, we are looking for land plots to buy land plot to start investing in warehousing. There is a lack of warehousing or quality warehousing. So let's say Kazakhstan, from a commercial point of view, it's booming, and I think it's not just because of the current situation, but it was already a few years ongoing because of the location. On one hand, on the other hand, we see, of course, more interest in the STAN countries, Uzbekistan, but also Georgia. But from our point of view as a logistics company, we see this more as moving goods from A to B, and it's good to have some feet on the ground to make sure that you work with the right partners, there is no quality issue. So the other countries in the CIS, yes, there is a lot of happening, things are improving, but if you look at the GDP per capita, for example, it's still very low. We work with premium brands, so for them, the market's not so interesting. So there, yes, it's growing, but not in the kind of business and customers we are today focused on.
Fair enough. Thanks, Stefan. Right. Well, as I say, one of the big themes we want to talk about today is sustainability. And if I may, I think I'll just hand it over to you.
Okay.
And from Ahlers' point of view and Stefan's point of view, what is sustainability? How is it affecting your business? And how does it help your customers?
Yeah. I think sustainability is a very wide word, you know, and a lot of things are underneath it. And from our limited point of view as a small family business, we have a approach, which I think it's a tailor-made approach. And we look at 4 kinds of sustainability. So we do logistics. So the first thing is that what can we do in our activities for the environment? It's only a part of it. So for transportation, we can look, we don't use a truck, but we use a train. We use railway, or we use sea freight. Or still, in a lot of countries, legislation towards using green trucks, if I can call it green trucks, is quite, while in Europe it's very strict rules, the kind of trucks you can use, the emission norms, while in a lot of countries in Asia, in CIS, there are no rules. So we also put for ourselves some requirements. We only want to use with trucks of this quality. So this is the second item we look at. Also, for example, we do warehousing. Or to come back to the trucks, I think another thing we can do is to look at our customers. And I give you an example. We look at the volumes of flows and to find round trips, we call it. We see a truck going from A to B, but in 3 days, there's a truck going from B to A. Can we delay one shipment or make another shipment a bit earlier so we have these round trips? But all these items I'm saying, it's still depending on the customer who says yes or no, because you can go by railway. Maybe it's even cheaper, but it will take 3 days more. Is a customer willing to have 3 days more stock as a result, because it costs money for the customer? So as a company, we look at our activity. We do warehousing, there it's more easy. We work with LED lights to reduce the energy. In our warehouses, we reduce the heating. So we gave our warehouse workers warmer clothes and reduce the heating. That's also have an impact. We work with electrical equipment instead of with petrol or with diesel equipment. So these are things we are doing in our activities, but most of them are, let's say, a bit depending on the customer. But that's a quite standard towards environment. But what we are doing since 3-4 years is that we ask the customer, what are your sustainability goals? And really go into detail, and then to see how can we help you to reach them. And of course, we are in the logistics part. So then we go a bit more in detail in the logistics part. And there it always comes to CO2 reduction. I would like to reduce CO2. And to give maybe an example, it can go, or it can be sometimes easy, but you don't see it. For example, we transport cigarettes. And cigarettes, it's very theft sensitive. You know, a truck of cigarettes, it's maybe $1-2 million of value, and you can sell it very easily. So in a lot of cases in the past, we had a car driving behind the truck with security. So these guys, you know, they follow the truck. You see this also with important people sometimes, but also with cigarettes, you see a car following the truck. And we said, okay, this car is also not good for the environment. Can we remove this car? Yes, but we need to keep security. So we put the guy in the truck. So you don't need a car. It's even cost saving. But then you notice that the backside of the truck is not secured anymore, because the guy is sitting in front of the truck. The backside is not secured. At the parking or even at the highway when the road is going up, people can still go to the truck, open the backside, take goods out, and even we don't notice it. Okay, it's a solution, but not as good as the previous one, so we should go back. But then we decided to make some kind of equipment with sensors, with monitors on the back of the truck. So at the end, we came to a solution that we take away these cars from the roads. It's not CO2 reduction of the truck, but it's the activities around, which is also making some CO2 reduction. So these kind of things can only work if you understand the customer, what they really want, and that you talk to them, how can we help them solve it, or how can we give some alternative solutions. So for us, that's a second kind of sustainability. And then we have 4 in total. We have the top-down things we are doing, the corporate initiatives. It's about training, about people. We have a rotation program, so every person in our company should work 1 day per year in another department. Just to, okay, I'm an IT guy and I'm going to work 1 day in accounting. See what is happening there, what is the processes, what are their challenges, just to understand each other a bit better. We talk about a clean up week, where every office in the world has a week where they're going to clean something, the streets, a site, the beach. It's like there are a lot of things which is really top down, which is very important that you show this as a company. That's important for us. But it's still sometimes they feel obliged to do it. Sometimes they're very happy to do it. And for me, the one I'm the most proud, we call it bottom up. So initiatives which are taken by the local offices, which we normally don't publish because we don't see this as a commercial thing. But for example, I know we stimulate in Belgium people to come with a bicycle, and you can give all these benefits. But for these people, I think once per month, I think we make a special breakfast, to motivate them. Also, we support people for donation of blood in Belgium. In China, we grow a tree. It's a local thing. In Russia, we do a lot of charity about dog shelter, where we go to walk with the dogs. We have some things for kids without parents, orphans, where we provide material help. So all these kind of things, which is, let's say, bottom up. And for me, it's also some kind of sustainability, which I like the most, because it comes from the people's heart, the people's motivation. And that's what we're also supporting. We financial support for that. We collect clothes in the office for people, secondhand clothes, so all these things. So for me, it's important. And at the end, and I think, and then I leave it back to you, I think what a lot of people don't know or don't focus on, for me, sustainability is also to make profit. Sorry to say, because as a company, I want to be sustainable. I want to pay salaries. I want to grow. I want to invest. I need to be able to sometimes put money in a total project. So for me, sustainability is also to make sure at the end of the year, I make a profit, so I can be a sustainable company for people and customers. And I think sometimes in your introduction, you mentioned, okay, about costs. It's also about cost, but people forget that it's not only about cost. So that's a bit the summary.
Thank you, Stefan. I'd like to bring you back on sustainability. You talk about rail rather than road, etc. as one there. I just wonder, my question will develop, within the processes and procedure, you pointed out fairly profitability your side. Rail and road is, I think, very understandable. Are you doing anything else with your processes and procedures in the company corporately, both internally and vis-a-vis the consumer? And one of the background thoughts I have is digital, of course, because would digital make things cleaner, more sustainable? Would digital make it more efficient or not? So what, any other procedures, processes, and where does digital fit in?
Yes, I think we are not the best in digital processes, internal, external. 2 reasons. I think we don't always put the focus on it. And of course, we have all the processes. We have process engineers, or we call it improvers within the company, who look at how we can automate a certain process, but first make it as good as possible, and then try to automate it. How can you make digital links with the customer? But for us, as a company, and our DNA is customer intimacy. And I was very happy that during COVID, suddenly there was so much disruption, and not just in logistics, but everything. But because we were not too digital, every customer could reach us. They could talk to us, they could call us, they don't need to fill in some form, or they don't need to call a certain number and then have six like dial options to go. So this analog, or how you can call it, contacts with the customer, for us, it's very critical, very crucial that we have this connection and you feel what's happening. And yeah, for sure, we are trying to make things optimize, but for us, it's always still a second priority after having the contacts and the flexibility, because we make tailor-made solutions. We are in a region which every day is changing. The more you automate, the more you are fixed to a certain process, and the less options you can give to the customer. So that's we made. Probably we're not then the most efficient there, but on the other hand, we are, let's say, the solution driven.
Very good. Thank you, Stefan. I do like the phrase very much customer intimacy, of course, very crucial. And I liked your example of the telephone calls. You're talking with a man who yesterday was phoning the British tax authorities in England. And I had lots and lots of fun, and I spent 30 minutes on the call, and I didn't speak to a human being, and I was not satisfied. So there we are. No customer intimacy. So maybe I cannot pay my tax. I don't know. I'm sure they'll be in touch with me somehow. Good.
Yes.
I'm quite satisfied with that topic. If you are, Stefan, I want to move on to some other things.
Yes.
Then we can come back to sustain. Oh, one thing I know that sustainability is not necessarily greenification and renewables, but there is a link. Now, of course, with the changes related to Russia, which we can come back to in a moment, there is going to be a lot less fossil fuel in the whole Western Europe, and a whole lot less, or massive amounts less, supplied from Russia. That's clear. Do you see in Europe, Belgium, and everywhere you're doing business, do you see more, renewables? Is that a driver? The greenification element? I know your territories, so the EU, apart from Belgium, doesn't have a very big impact. Is it related that a lot going on? The reason I mention it, by the way, Stefan, I'm working with companies like SAP and Oracle, and renewables and greenification is playing a massive part in their business, because of course that's EU funding programs, etc., which you are a different business. But I just wonder, greenification, renewables, does that fit in, or is it not a big issue?
Yes, I think even in Asia, it's quite big. And what we see, we do, for example, project shipments, so moving factories from B, and we see a lot of investments in greenification of a factory or refurbishment of a factory to do it, let's say, more energy efficient. So there we see a lot of opportunities from our side. So I think that's for sure a trend, not only in Europe but also in Asia. And on the other hand, and that's maybe I'm maybe not the best to say this, but also I believe in innovation. And and I have a lot of discussion about it and about greenification, but at a certain moment you should not abandon all the techniques from the past, because you can also use innovation to reduce their impact on the environment. And talk about nuclear plants and things like that. So for me, it's not only about the new energy sources, but also how can we make the current one less having an impact on the environment. And I think I believe a lot in innovation. And if you see what's happening, and in the world, and new ideas and new tools, techniques, it's amazing. So I'm sure they can also help us to help the environment, to become better, let's say.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. You started with mentioning, and we both have a great affinity for Russia and the CE region. We talked a little bit about the CIS. Just you said at the start the commitment to staying with your customers and your staff. And you mentioned also that, some of the fewer clients perhaps, and the trends I'm following on that as well. Just in brief, I'd say about 60% of companies are trying to stay in the Russian market, and very loosely, and then 30 to 40% have left or are in the process of leaving or downsizing significantly. I'd also like to share with our listeners and viewers that, business in 22, for many, not all, but for many who were staying in Russia, was very good. Pharmaceutical, food and beverages. And I was speaking with a company yesterday, household durable products, and they had a very good 22. They think, the executives, and I think that 23 will be softer, and we're seeing some signs of that. So really, could you elaborate just a bit more on what you're doing in Russia? And the other thing I want to say is, I think many of our clients were saying, logistics a year ago was agony and very risky and threatening. Those who have planned to stay in some shape now feel that logistics are manageable, adaptable, fixed in inverted commas. One of the problems, by the way, that's building up is the financing and the banking. That's another story. So really, how's Ahlers seeing Russia last year and this year?
I like the word you used, trying to stay, because we also decided to stay, but it's more trying to stay sometimes than to stay. Yeah. Last year, you said we went from a shock into a crisis mode, and a crisis mode was we don't know what will happen, so we have some cost saving, cutting costs, but at the end we have less income, but not as less as expected. So the end of the year was still good for us, like you mentioned, in many companies. From a financial point of view, from an emotional point of view, for sure not. And this year we see much more challenges. Like I said, the price of logistics is going down, so the margins are going down. Inflation is high everywhere in the world, especially in Europe. So we see much more challenges, and also investments we put on hold last year, we cannot put on hold this year anymore, about training, IT, hiring. So this year will be a challenging year. And from our business, and I can only confirm what you're saying, I think logistics is under control. We know how to bring the goods. There are not every week new sanctions or new rules about blocking trucks or things like that. So logistics is under control. Of course, a lot is rerouted to Asia. Things are coming from India, from Vietnam, from China, from other countries, which is much easier from a logistics point of view. And you're 100% right. The financing is the biggest challenge today. If I want to pay something non-sanctioned goods, it's already a big challenge, and in euro or dollar it's quite impossible. I need to pay in other currencies, and what we notice now, and that's interesting, and the good thing is that we are quite international, so we have offices in different countries, but also bank accounts in different countries, is that some customers say in Russia, like, if I want to buy my goods in China, it's so complex, this financing, getting the money there. Can you not just buy the goods for us, bring them to Russia, and we will buy them from you in Russia, in local currency? And okay, we have the contacts with the supplier, we do the deal about the price, we make sure the exchange rate is all covered, but we don't want the headache of getting all these payments done. So we see now more and more that they ask financial solution is the way to, let's say, convince a customer to work together instead of a logistic solution. And that's something we are now really putting down our financial flows to make sure everything is okay, that the currency is okay, that there are any issues with compliance, and at the end, we as a Western company, it's important to get our money in Europe in euros or in dollars. So it's not just finding a solution to China or to Hong Kong, but finding a solution back to Europe. So yes, you're right. I think the financial things are now much more challenging than the logistics.
Yes, I certainly agree, Stefan, and that's everything you said is there. You didn't name them, but I can, and you know, many of our group members were, for example, were with Citibank. Citibank have effectively left the market, so many transferred to Raiffeisen Bank, and Raiffeisen Bank is going through a number of stresses and strains, and I think the outlook for them will be extremely challenging in the next 15 months or so, and we will see. But just to finish off, I'm wary about, oh my goodness, we have done, the time has gone quickly, which is a good sign. But Stefan, just think, well, any closeout comments from you, but my closeout question would be, you know, we talked about a few geographies, but with the way of the world and, you know, politics coming back into it, we've got tensions with China. You know, Russia is Russia with its stresses and strains, and the outlook is not short term. We've got the CIS, which we talked about. We've got potential strains and conflicts with China, which would be very, very disruptive if they worsen. It would make the Russian story look very small scale. So risk is increasing. I'm not making any statements about what could happen, we know, but certainly risk is increasing. Some companies are de-risking from China. Volkswagen, McDonald's and others are pouring in to capture market share, and let's see what happens to their risk. But globally, just to finish off on a very strategic picture, Stefan, how do you see the Asian risks, and what are the alternatives? You know, onshoring, reshoring, how do you keep your supply chain, you know, safe? You know, I'm joking, Belgium supply chains for Belgium, Dutch ones for Dutch, etc. How do you see it's a tough question.
A tough question.
How do you see the next 5 years panning out for your business and the world?
Normally, I'm a very positive person, and I'm still a positive person.
Okay.
But at the moment, I really don't know. Like you said, even yesterday I read an article about the academic world, that they're also keeping things more and more closed, while before they were sharing it with all their colleagues worldwide to get quicker results for a new medicine or for a disease, you know. Now they're also more and more close. So I think we're going more and more to a closed world. Yeah? And even if you are trying to de-risk, if you go one step further, for example, I would like to have my suppliers close to me, but your suppliers also have suppliers and they're not close to you. So you can think that you're de-risking and centralize or go everything to a local, to a region. We are so, and there are many examples of a small, like a pencil, and then they go into analyze where all the goods are coming from. It's so global, you cannot turn it back. And even today, Russia is more or less isolated, but they're completely not isolated, because they still have supplies from all over the world. They still have deliveries to a lot of places. So even if you want to isolate, you cannot. So for me, yes, I believe in de-risking, but for me, de-risking is diversifying. And we in the past, as a logistics company, we are 115 years old. We always have activities was doing well, other one were doing bad, or a region was doing well, a region was doing bad. Like I said in the beginning, we are now preparing a startup in Vietnam. It's diversifying for the region. We are building or want to buy land plot in Kazakhstan. So it's now our diversification is a bit the region, not the activity. But the last couple of years, we spent a lot of time on focusing on some new activities. But even today, like I said a few minutes ago, this financial solution we are now working on, it's a new activity. So I think it's very hard to predict what's happening. I think already 7 years ago, we were thinking that the US will have a female president, the first one, but then something else happened.
Yeah.
So you can predict so many things. Better to diversify and to have alternatives.
By the way, de-risking is diversifying, to quote you, and I think that's a good quotation. Very good indeed. I just as a piece of humor at the end, Stefan, I loved your comment when you started. I used to be an optimistic person. I also used to be an optimistic person, and as I said offline before, and maybe I've gone to the dark side. I hope I'm wrong. But I think geopolitics are not going to help us for the next few years. And as you say, let's diversify and see how we go. But it's been, as ever, Stefan, talking to you, a real pleasure. And I look forward to more private conversations and glasses of wine, cups of coffee, beers around the world. I wish you and your team all good fortune and safety. And I look forward to staying in touch personally and with your colleagues, and to seeing you at one of the events in the near future this year.
Yes. Thanks, Danny, and also for your reports and all the insights sharing from other companies. I think is very valuable for us, and I think also the other members. So thanks a lot for that.
Thank you, Stefan. There's more on the way. Take good care, and we'll switch off there. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.